Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dragged into Turbolasers, a Between the Bolter and Me podcast. This is episode 51. I'm your host, Eric Wire, and I'm here tonight with my two brothers, Adam Wire
Hey everybody.
and Greg Wire.
Good evening, everyone, or at least from when we're recording it, it's fairly late in the evening.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. And as we've been doing for the last few episodes, this is also being recorded live on Twitch and YouTube. That I would encourage anyone to view, and even if you can't watch it live, the sort of recording should be up on Twitch and YouTube on our YouTube channel, both of which are just between the Bolter and me, and you can actually see kind of the models we're talking about and things and pictures and whatnot, which can be helpful at times depending on how familiar you are with kind of current releases or kind of the work that we've been doing. So I would certainly encourage people to look into that, and you can see hopefully the quality improves steadily over time. Although at the moment my internet connection is really hampering that quality, but whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But I guess with that said, this is actually going to be our last podcast for the year, the last of 2018. Somehow it's already come
Already
and
over.
gone.
What did we even do? Who
I don't
knows?
know.
I hardly know.
That's what we're going to talk about. So
So we're gonna find out by looking through our posts.
yeah, looking back.
Figure it out.
Yeah, but I just felt that usually at the end of every year on our blog between the Bolter and me, we have a series of three posts, sort of kind of recapping the year. That at the end, and these usually show up end of December, early January, in which we both sort of review the stuff we've done.
Yeah,
We all,
we pat ourselves on the back and say how
yeah.
good of a job we did. This year's better than the last.
Yeah.
Say it. We're gonna say it. Is it true? I don't know.
Well, yeah, it
Yeah,
probably isn't because I hardly remember what we even did.
Well,
yeah, well,
we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna look.
Well, I
yeah.
guess we could start a wager at the beginning for anyone who listens to it now. How many models do you think I painted over the years? So over this year for Adam, how many has Adam painted? And then I guess how many has Eric painted? And then we can
How many
already
is Greg?
guess how many has Greg painted. We already know the answer to that.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, I did go to some paint and take events some Thursday evenings, and I painted some models, but they were never photographed and shown anywhere.
We should show him sometime, Greg.
Yeah,
Or
Yeah,
well,
it's
even
true.
you painted a bunch of models like maybe it was last year. We should show them
nah,
on the
it was
blog.
2 years ago or
2
three. It
years
was a
ago,
while.
Jesus, that was a long
It was
time
like
ago.
Yeah, time
Um,
flies.
but yeah,
But
so if you're
yes,
listening, you could make some wagers. The best year I think we ever had was what the year we
not
did
this
the.
year.
It wasn't this year, yeah. Was when we started doing events again, and we had the Pilgrim event in England, and then the Curse of the Alabaster event in Los Angeles. And I think I painted roughly like 20 some models, like maybe 24 models that
God
year.
damn.
Staggeringly high. So
God damn.
take a
Yeah, but
guess.
so I guess you can look forward to some of those posts, and probably the first we'll just do a thing kind of reviewing our favorite models that were released in the years. And we used to do it for different modeling companies as well as Games Workshop, but by and large, we've kind of lost interest in most other miniature manufacturers because a lot of the stuff isn't not too much to write home about, or at least not in our what I like to
But
see.
hey, man, next year maybe look out for some reviews of some of WizKids D&D miniatures. Now, maybe that's getting
Um,
your hopes up that we'll do that. But as I mentioned earlier, I've been every once in a while painting some stuff that I've never shown any of you. But most of those are some D&D miniatures that WizKids has been doing that I mean, they have a shit ton of them, like so many, and they're not all good, but most of them have more realistic proportions than like what GW would make, and that in itself is somewhat appealing.
Also,
Um,
that reminds that's something that we could do. We could actually have like a little a post on the blog every so often. If you go and like paint a model, we could have a short post about that, Greg.
like if I,
Yeah, briefly talk about the model. Like it doesn't even have to be a finished painted model, whatever. It would be different content for the blog, and
I'm
maybe it would
showing
help.
off sick new miniatures
It's
that
like,
Yeah,
wow, look at that shallow detail.
yeah.
I've started painting an owlbear. The WizKids owlbear model is fucking great.
Well, yeah. So we should talk about that, and then it might be
Yeah.
another way to like for like newer viewers who are like getting into the hobby and aren't don't have a lot of experience with like converting and painting and stuff like that. Might
Like
be
me.
like a yeah, like you, Greg. It
Well,
would
I think we should
help bridge some of those gaps.
we should buy some of those WizKids models, just a random assortment of some, and open them up on the Twitch channel and give them to people
Yeah,
because
it would
everybody
be
People
loves a
love
good
those.
unboxing.
even if it's for something you don't care about.
Yeah, who gives a
It's
shit?
true.
Especially if you can win
Like
it.
Spaceman Heroes.
Yeah, we cared.
uh, yeah, well,
All
I
right.
guess maybe
So
we
I don't
move
know. Yeah, we
on.
can let's start working through the months. We're gonna sort of go chronologically, and I feel the first thing is almost a model that I almost even forgot that this happened. One of the first things that I had done in the year, which I think it was even during like say the first week of the year. Yeah, it was this post was posted on January 8th. I converted and painted a scientist model quickly to be used um, in an event taking place in Nottingham. And I guess this event was being headed up by the same person we worked with for the Curse of the Alabaster event, Jonathan Hartman. Many might know him by his Instagram
Shibboleth.
handle. Yeah, Shibboleth. And he's really prolific with like making terrain and stuff like that. Like great Necromunda terrain. In the case of this event, making like kind of a Space Hulk type,
Hmm.
like Valor
Yeah,
Mortalis board, and then now he's working on an Adeptus Titanicus board that looks great.
yeah,
But
but this event had a bunch of great people involved in it.
and I guess
And
if you're buying like the White Dwarf magazines for the past few months or this year, they had a bunch of issues detailing some of that stuff. But I guess it was called Leslo 212, and it involved like a virulent outbreak in some like a space station of sorts.
Zombies.
Zombies,
Zombies.
lots of them. But yeah,
mm,
so for that I converted like an imperial scientist, complete with like a blue lab coat, some nitrile purple gloves, and he
yeah, I wear those every day.
yeah man, and then he has like a little las pistol that like he doesn't really know what he's
He,
doing.
it's a she,
Well, yeah, in
man.
this case, it actually is a she. She you can tell she doesn't know what she's doing because she has her finger on the trigger when she's obviously not aiming it. So, yeah, that was a
That's
little
the very
detail.
Games Workshop.
Well, yeah, that's where I was able to take advantage of Games Workshop sculpting for that.
That's a bitchin' las pistol.
You know, it's a pretty small converted las pistol.
And it
It's a
looks
big
sort of,
las pistol, but
it looks kind of like the older design too, with that sort of tapered front and
I think the barrel was actually taken from a Battlefleet Gothic like laser
Hmm.
battery.
it does look that way.
Do we know if the model successfully got to Jonathan?
Yes, he did get the model. I know he
Excellent.
sent some messages thanking me for it, and he got it before he left for for Nottingham. So from all I know, it successfully made it to the event. Whether or not the model was actually used in the event, I have no idea. And all in all of the pictures I've seen from the event, I never saw the model. Um,
Probably would have died pretty fast.
yeah, no, she probably died immediately, but
But
well, hopefully she did take part in the battle. But I
it's a
feel
cool model.
she'd stick out pretty readily from her bright coat. And I was pretty happy with the model. Like I had a lot of little interesting details. Like I painted on the model like a little bloody handprint on her one sleeve.
When honestly, I feel this is sort of uh, we have a new thing on the blog, which we'll probably talk a little bit about later. This conversion corner column, sort of, we're starting up
Mm-hmm.
to try to do more conversions more quickly. And honestly, this is kind of similar. Well, this would fit, I think, in that
Yeah.
who would have ever thought we would have used this model?
No, yeah. So this was a model from the Forge World Death Core Quartermaster Retinue. Yeah, it's one of the models that I probably even have like two of them, and I never really predicted that I'd use them.
Yeah, so it's neat that like this model is actually used, and I feel that hopefully, yeah, I guess yeah, even next year we can do some more things sort of like this, just making interesting little models that maybe we don't spend like months sculpting. But
Yeah.
yeah, so good
Yeah,
start to the
so
year, I
that
think.
was the first model. So that would be a tally for me. There's one model that I painted.
There it is.
Yeah. Um, then I guess moving on, this I guess the next thing that I actually painted was this Death Guard Space Marine that I converted. I think I had finished converting the model the previous year, but only got around to painting it.
Oh yeah, that's a great model. Yeah, it's just part of our thing. Being sort of disappointed with the revamp version of the Death Guard. Um, we wanted to try to not just complain about the stuff, but sort of try to do our own part to show kind of what we would want in the model.
Hey, stop the presses, everyone. Our friend Lifeboat Sank is in the house.
Crazy.
Hey, nice to see you. Thanks for joining. But yeah, so Adam, yeah, you converted a Death Guard and kind of tried to improve the proportions and such because the newer Death Guard models aren't horrible. I mean, but then they were made bigger to be similar to the Primaris, but they didn't benefit from the improved proportions. So
Mm-hmm.
at least in our minds, that it wasn't a strong release in the sense that if you'd really want to make an army, like you'd have to spend a lot of time in fixing every single model, which I don't know, isn't really
Yeah, it
if
would
you want to
almost be
build a large army,
easier.
it's just so
It would be easier to
difficult.
just get some Primaris Space Marines and rework them. And that's actually what I did for some of this model here. Like, the legs are Primaris Space Marine legs, which I sculpted over top of to kind of have some of the like older like an older iron armor look to it.
You know, you kind of wouldn't initially suspect those were Primaris legs from that, I don't think.
You can sort of tell from the backside if you can see like the rear of the model, his like buttocks is like more detailed and filled out than a lot of the marine models.
Ah, yes. Yes,
And he
yes.
also has one of the second edition Space Marine bolters, which was modified to give it a stalk, like more of a wooden stalk, and it also has a
Hmm.
front and rear sight, which is
Crazy
always
to think.
absent. There's also a little release behind the magazine, the ammunition magazine, to release the magazine.
Mm.
The red on that bolter looks really nice.
I don't know if I have a better picture. No, not really. It's hard to see it. And then I had fun work with his base too. But oh, and actually, here's a picture. I actually took the model to one of the local games workshops in this case San Diego, and here he's standing next to some of the like Dark Imperium models that came out at around that time. A little after that, actually, or
Hmm.
he was finished a little after that. And you can tell he's a little bit taller than a Primaris Space Marine. He's
Hmm.
significantly taller than the Nurgle Death Guard. Um,
Yeah, the kind of bad looking Death Guard that he was trying to replace.
yeah, he's built
uh,
for brutality. That was kind of the tagline, or that's what I was trying to get across. Built for brutality.
good fit. What head was that from? I don't.
Oh,
Is that like
this is actually
Abaddon or something?
Abaddon. Yeah, the Forge World Abaddon model. The model where he's like facing off against Loken.
Hmm.
Yeah, we purchased that model around when it came out, which was years ago, and obviously did
Obviously.
nothing with it until
Yeah.
finally I just took the head and added some horns, sculpted a new tongue.
It's also you spent the time kind of experimenting with more weathering sort of techniques, and I think really paid off, like to give kind of the armor
Weathered
sort of a
bone
dirty
look
white
to it.
look.
Yeah. So I was happy with it. So yeah, this brings the model count that I painted up to two.
Shit, incredible.
Yeah.
I feel that's like probably my favorite chaos. I mean, I know we're just praising ourselves here, but I honestly feel this is like my favorite chaos model, chaos space marine I've seen.
Well, that's some high praise, Eric. I don't know. I'm pretty happy with him, but we'll have to see. I should try and make some more in the future.
You should make one for all the major chaos legions.
Well, if in the new year, if they do a bunch of new chaos releases, if they're found wanting, maybe we'll do
Yeah,
this again.
that's true. That's a good point.
So look forward to that if it happens.
Maybe Slanesh will rise. Like they released the fiends, the Slanesh. It could happen.
It could happen. That's true. So yeah, we'll see. So that's moving on. That's what happened. That's what we did next. And then I guess we move into one of the bigger projects of the year, and that was designing and casting some like new Imperial Guard models that we were hoping to use for Iron Sleet's Thorn Moon event, and then also just some of our own events and stuff in the future with like Imperial Guard. Um, and in this
Yeah.
case, we were taking some of the Elysian drop troops from Forge World, which they actually discontinued this year, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate. But
Sad
we were
day.
taking some of those and spending a lot of time reworking and resculpting like their torsos, removing the armor and adding different combat webbing, modifying the legs to add like webbing and stuff for like side holsters. And then I spent a lot of time reworking and remaking a lot of their weaponry,
Yeah, no,
including
I feel in general it was one of the major efforts of the year, but it was trying to like realize, like I don't really like the Imperial Guard models released by Games Workshop. Or not necessarily that they're bad, but it would be nice to have some more variety and not just Acadian shock troops. And we don't really love all the heroic scale proportions of a lot of the models. So by starting like with a basis of the Elysian drop troops, we could kind of modify them, remove all the armor and stuff, and create new weapons largely from scratch, such that we could just kind of have our own Imperial Guard that we actually like, rather than hoping that some new plastic ones are released. Which, admittedly, the Blackstone Fortress, which was recently released, did release some Trader Guard, which
they're pretty
or at
good. They're
least a
pretty
good
strong.
step. And they actually have some female models, which was another thing that we wanted to do for the models we created here. Like actually have some like to be able to make female models that really don't stand out
Yeah, I
and
think
aren't
for this,
obviously female.
three of the four torsos were actually sculpted to be female torsos, and then the fourth one could have been either male or female.
Hmm.
But yeah, so we did a lot of that sculpting, and then here it's showing some of like models that I built with some of the cast Marine or cast Imperial Guard, and I also reworked some of like the little gas masks that you see a lot taken from the Skitarii. I'm
So
gonna say
Karen Rust Stalkers, right?
the Rust Stalkers. Yeah, so
Honestly, didn't you start some of this conversion work even the year prior?
I actually did. Yeah, that's true.
See, it was really a long time coming to like get it up to that point and converted a lot of interesting little weapons and
Yeah, and like each one of them has like a sidearm in addition to their rifle. Yeah, so that was the start of like casting those models, and we'll talk more about them as we move further into the year. And I guess that a
when was
following
this?
month,
Like March?
um, that was in March. So then in
Okay.
April, we continue some of that work with an exciting collaboration with the Polysmith, which many of you may know from like Instagram and other social media things. He's kind of a sculpture, like painting, like hobbyist extraordinaire of sorts, who's seemingly great at everything.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's really good. And we collaborated with him, and he digitally sculpted and designed a whole set of female heads that we could use with the guard that we were working on. Um, and so here you can see some of like the renders that he designed and had them all printed for us. And a lot of the guard that I ended up assembling this year are using some of those heads.
You know, he's really, really great to work with. Really nice guy, and like, if you don't already follow him on Instagram or Twitter, like you really should, because he like makes some of the most imaginative conversions. Like you'll really find it anywhere, and they're all very technical and precise, and look very different from just standard 40K stuff. Like beyond like a standard kit bash and like completely reworking and imagining things. And some of that probably stems from he does a lot of sort of digital design work. So he has just a lot of talent kind of with sculpture and physical form and stuff. And it really shows in his work. And certainly in these, uh, the heads that he designed, which was sort of spawned from our disappointment with the Necromunda Escher release because of how tiny the heads were for those models.
Yeah, I mean their heads were great. I really liked them, but they were just way too small.
Well,
Um,
so a further comment about the Polysmith. A lot of his conversions, he'll like take pieces from other kits and just look at the like profile or silhouette of the piece and then imagine what he could use that for. So
mhm.
oftentimes they'll be using pieces that for things other than what they were initially intended for
Mm-hmm.
to
It's true.
great effect.
Yeah, so I guess I've assembled a few models with some of these heads, but unfortunately, in the course of this year, like I haven't actually painted any of them with those heads, and so that's something that I am looking forward to actually doing in the coming year.
Yeah,
So I
no,
guess
that
I
should
will
be
talk about it. I think I only really painted one or two models from these guard and stuff that I spent so long
good.
sculpting and casting. So we sort of created a great resource for ourselves, but we haven't really tapped into it as much as we should have, I think.
Yeah, but next year,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so look forward to that. Okay. Then moving on, Eric, this is some of the stuff you are working on. So at the same time, you are helping me kind of work on the Thorn Moon related stuff, and you had assembled and like painted like an armored vehicle. In this case, based off of a Russian T-26,
Yeah,
and
no,
you painted that to be used in Iron Sleet's Thorn Moon event.
yeah, it was based. It was just a 135th scale Hobby Boss T-26, which was like a Russian light tank. Um, that I don't know. I was sort of got fascinated with the idea of trying to use some actual historical scale models in 40K, just because I don't know. In general, like the real tank designs are more sensical and look better. Although since Games Workshop models are all heroic scale, a lot of their tanks and stuff kind of things are really odd, their proportions and whatnot. So, um, but I didn't even do much conversion work on this T-26. They changed some of the turrets and things, but largely left it as it was. Um, God, this this was my first experience with, well, in general, most or a lot of scale model tanks and things are a lot more complex kits than most GW ones, have a
Mm-hmm.
lot more parts and things of that nature. And this one in particular was my first experience with like building like extensive tracks. Like this one, like I put together every single link by and attach them together with tiny little plastic pins. Each track has maybe 114 tracks, each one with two little pins. Like it was terrible. It was terrible. But despite that, I purchased another one and got some aftermarket tracks, metal ones, Master Club ones, which I thought might be easier to assemble. But they have sort of their own issues, and I haven't. Well, I think they're ultimately better. They're still a pain. Like when you have to put together like over 200 links a track, like it it's gonna take a while, regardless of how nice they are. But it
Yeah.
was fun to like just sort of build like a different sort of modeling kit and see how they differ from Games Workshop ones. And I would certainly encourage people to do it, like because I don't know, and just some of the historical aspects are kind of neat too. But it allowed me to also experiment a lot with different weathering techniques, use a lot of different sort of streaking effects and a few oil paints and whatnot, a lot of which I use some like MIG streaking grimes and some of their brusher sort of products to do some dot filters and whatnot, just to make the tank look a little bit more realistic and weathered and sort of beaten up. And so that was fun. Like, I mean, I guess I would love to kind of build some more and uh, continue to kind of experiment with some of the weathering processes and whatnot, because I feel there's a lot you can do there. And
Mm-hmm.
the more you think about it and try to compare it with reference pictures and such, the more convincing you can make it look. Whereas, admittedly, I think a lot of this was just kind of done at random. And I feel if I would have been a little bit more careful with it and used more references, it could have been better. But ultimately, I finished the painting maybe within a week or so, so it was pretty quick.
Yeah.
But it was fun, and
Yeah.
I'm glad I was able to do it, and kind of excited to hopefully do some more things like this sometime in the coming year or just sometime in the future.
Well, yeah, I feel if we continue working on the guard that we started this year, we'll probably want to try and convert some like armored vehicles and stuff for them, which we can probably look towards a similar means.
Yeah, no, I think that would be would be fun.
Yeah.
And if anyone's listening, let us know what your favorite tanks are, and if there are ones that you think would work well to like sort of modify and put into 40K.
Yep, certainly. Okay. And so I guess when was that? That was in June. Okay, so then also in June, I was working on converting another model for the guard. In this case, trying to create kind of like an infiltration expert from one of the newly released Necromunda kits at the time. In this case, the Van Saar, because they were essentially one of the first kits Games Workshop released of like soldiers in like body gloves or armored body gloves. And so here I was trying to sort of take advantage of that. Um,
And ultimately build a model of Solid Snake or
yeah,
something.
it sort of ended up turning into kind of creating like a model that looks very much like an older version of Solid Snake. Um,
Yeah, I feel
and
it was something that always kind of wanted to have something like this for years, but never wanted to jump into it knowing that it would be a lot of work.
yeah, and so
And
in this case, like I made
it
use
was.
of one of the Van Sar models, but um, ended up having to sort of resculpt the entire torso, modify some of the proportions of the legs, um, and
Yeah,
like
no,
sculpt
if
all the
anyone
combat
gets
webbing.
the Van Sar kit, like you have some work with you. A lot of the poses are pretty weird, wide stance, their legs are different lengths. There's some odd stuff there going on there.
Well, yeah, so this one here, which I took, was probably one of the better poses in the set. The legs are sped pretty wide, but not nearly as extreme as some of the others. And here was like I extend part of the problem in this case. The head that I wanted to use was one from one of the Empire Great Swords kits, and their heads are pretty big, much bigger than the heads used on the Van Sar models. So to sort of get around that, I had to lengthen the torso of the Van Sar and lengthen the legs. Um, and I still feel, even after doing that, maybe his head is still a little large, but it is what it is. Nothing's going to be perfect.
Yeah, it's true.
Um, but
But
here I
this, you did
also,
get to use some of the stuff you sculpted for the Imperial Guard, so you kind of made use of some of that, right?
yeah, no, it's true. Like the one little pistol that I sculpted, I used one of those pistols, and then I used some brass tubing to create like the barrel and a silencer for the pistol. Um, and it was I feel a pretty successful and interesting conversion where I kind of was trying to use it to like really experiment with like sculpting and try and really take a model and change it. So here we end with like a picture of the model next to one of the like Imperial Guard with one of the polysmith heads.
Yeah, like how tall is he in relationship to like the lock models? Are they similar? Probably
Mm,
relatively similar.
I'd actually that's something I would be neat, interesting to actually check. I feel they'd actually be relatively similar if he was actually standing up straight, which in this case he certainly is not.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
feel just on a passing glance, it looked like he's probably like a head or two smaller than the newer Deloc models. Whether or not that's actually true, but certainly visually it will sort of appear that way.
So next year you have to make a Cyber Ninja, Adam. Make me feel it. Make me feel alive again.
That's true. The guard could have like an assassin or something that I could
I
convert.
feel it would be great to make some sort of kill team or something
That would be actually
sort
pretty
of
fun.
reminiscent of Foxhound. They're one of the
Yeah.
crazy
Yeah.
groups, Dead Cell, whatever, from the various Metal Gear Solid games. At least not just directly from them, but somewhat reminiscent from them.
Yeah.
The Metal Gear Solid games always had some crazy kind of villains and characters that were always pretty fun.
Yeah. I guess then moving on. I guess this is Eric. You actually made use of the cast Imperial Guard and assembled and painted a unit of the Guard to be used and sent to the people from Iron Slate in their Thorn Moon event.
Yeah, now I can't even believe that happened. Like I like practically increased the number of models I painted by like 3 times.
No, it's true.
uh,
You assembled and painted a whole bunch of models. In this case, a
yeah,
small squad of 5.
yeah, I can't even believe I did that.
So
But
that brings your model count, Eric, up to 6. You're beating me handily. At this point, I had only painted 2 models.
yeah, no, but it was like because I feel like, and I painted them within a relatively short time, a couple weeks. Which I mean, I have painted so few models that I don't really have much experience or much to gauge it with, and I certainly am nowhere near the
Yeah.
skill that you're at, Adam, and don't spend nearly as much time. But it was still fun to, experiment with painting and such, and try to get it to fit alongside uh, the tank that I had painted. So just using a lot of drab greens and browns and whatnot. So like it was a good experience. I'm glad I was able to do it. And at this point, as such a sort of novice painter, it was nice just to try to paint some stuff relatively quickly and just experiment with things. Because I guess, as with pretty
That's
much
how you
anything,
learn.
like the only way you're going to get better is by practicing and trying things. So
Yeah.
it can be easy to sort of not want to risk things or not want to do stuff because you're sort of concerned, like, oh, what if it doesn't turn out well? But like, you just need to push forward. So I'm glad I was able to do it. And having a deadline to be
That often
finished
helps a lot.
and
Yeah.
in time to be used, like, I think was important for it actually happening.
Yeah, and so these were, yeah, they were designed and made for Iron Sleet's Thorn Moon event, which, if you're not too familiar with that, you should go to their Iron Sleet's blog, and they have lots of posts about the event you can read about. And these models did successfully make it there. And talking with the people from the event, they made it onto the battlefield and helped defend the Thorn Moons from the Imperial invaders.
Yeah, which sadly the Thorn Moons were destroyed.
Yeah, it's a shame.
All those Night Titans and Space Wolves and Navigators. There was just so much stacked against
Yeah, I mean, some
the
did escape though,
misunderstood
so
other one.
we can look forward to hearing more about that probably in the coming year from Iron Sleet. So that
Yeah,
would be
hopefully.
exciting. Yeah.
I think
Um,
I think supposedly the tank held up a I don't
one of the
Redemptor dreadnought. Is
Separan.
that what the Primaris dreadnoughts are called?
I
I
don't
think
remember.
I'm pretty sure that's what they're called. I think it held up one of the Death Watch one of Tony's Death Watch Redemptor dreadnoughts for a few turns, which is funny because wow, the models took a while to paint and make and all that. Like ultimately, it was still just Imperial Guardsmen like standing down against Space Marines and
Yeah.
custodes and all that stuff. So they didn't really stand much of a chance, but they fought a noble fight, I believe. So
Yeah.
it's good. It's good.
Okay. All right. So then moving on from there. Oh, here um, is a post where I sort of was. This was the first instance where I was trying to take advantage of the cast components of the Imperial Guard that I made, and I took them and converted a little a shotgun jetpack toting mercenary for another event taking place, in this case called Mare Solum. And I painted the model, and I think I assembled, converted, and painted the model in about like maybe about a week before the event, and sent it off to be used in the event. And I guess the event took place in America in
Chicago, I
Chicago.
think.
Yeah. Um,
Dark Tech on Instagram, I think, was sort of the lead behind it, but there were a lot of other great people
mm,
involved, including Weirding Way, and a few others that did a lot of great stuff that I think can easily find if you kind of, I think, just use the hashtag for Mayor Solum, or I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but it was really neat. Lots of interesting ideas and whatnot. And I guess in this case, it was good you were able to actually use some of those casts. And I guess this was also the first model that you used that glowing pigment on, I think.
oh yeah, so that was another thing that I experimented with. So he has a whole bunch. The model, or she has a whole bunch of like lights and other stuff attached to her armor. And for this, I ended up buying this like a pigment that actually absorbs and emits light, and I use that to paint all of the lights and like the little view screen from her visor. And if you like turn out the lights or put them in like a darker area, that actually glows a little. So that was something that I had fun experimenting around a
Yeah, I
little.
feel you had that pigment for a little while, and it was nice that you found the
A
opportunity
good
to
opportunity
use
to
it.
use it. Yeah. Um,
And it was cool to use those Imperial Guard and make a fairly different looking model, a little bit more sort of steampunk looking, rather than a more modern sort of looking military vibe that we had sort of been going for.
yeah.
So this is the third model that you painted this
Yeah,
year,
this is
Adam?
Model 3. Model 3. Um,
All of which are no longer in our possession.
oh yeah,
Well, hell,
they were
actually,
all of them were sent out to fellow friends and hobbyists.
well, I guess
Wait,
towards that end,
not Snake. Was you have
but
Snake,
I
don't
but
you?
haven't painted. That
he
hasn't come
wasn't
up
painted
yet.
at this time. He's
Oh, was
eventually painted.
No.
but I mean, there's a picture at the top of this Mare Solum post with the model painted.
Oh
No,
yeah,
I
so
guess
I
that's
mean
true.
that was I took that picture before we even had a post on the blog about the
Yeah,
model.
yeah, it's true. But I guess yeah, all those paint models I painted were sent away too. So
Yeah,
most
I
of the
feel most
models
of the
that we
models we
painted,
painted this year we just gave away, which is fine. That I feel
Boy,
is
we're
one of my
great. Wow. Let's pat
favorite.
ourselves on the back for that.
No, I no, but I think that's one of my favorite aspects of the hobby in general is just interacting with the community and taking
yeah,
part in the various events and stuff. Like I
yeah,
feel
'cause it's
I'd rather I'd rather send a lot of the stuff away and
Excite other people about stuff.
yeah.
yeah,
So
nah, it's cool to because so many people have different ideas and different ideas for events and that sort of thing, and it's neat to sort of support that and see like, oh, like what kind of cool things can be spawned from it, and I don't know, it's nice to just support other hobbyists and
yeah, we get a lot.
um,
We certainly get a lot of inspiration from
nah, it's yeah,
other
certainly,
hobbyists. So
and if it's also nice just if we can make use of some models that we had lying around or pieces of models that wouldn't have otherwise been used, like that's
yeah,
good because we have enough models.
we do. But yeah, so if you're not too familiar with the Mare Solum event, spend a little time looking around Instagram for some of the different models and stuff, and you'll be pleasantly surprised. A lot of cool stuff, including flying whales.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Well, so let's soldier on. We're like 44 minutes into this podcast.
We don't have that much more to talk about, I don't think.
Now,
Yeah, so then the next model, which you sort of got a hint from that last post, but I finally finished painting that like infiltration expert, and again, sort of playing off some of the military vibes and stuff from like the Metal Gear Solid series with a lot of like grays and like blues and stuff. But so yeah, I painted that model. So that brings it up to four. Four models painted. What a feat! And here he's standing next to one of a model.
Well, in this, I mean, I guess you had done a little bit for some other models, but didn't you continue to kind of try to use some stippling techniques for painting and such? You'd done a little bit with some of the others, and at least
it's
that's
a little hard to see that,
new,
but
right?
like I tried playing around with some different textures and stuff on like the armor itself, which a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
feel
it's hard to see in the pictures here, and you'd sort of have to see the model in person.
But yeah, I feel a lot of that's something that a lot of painters are now kind of experimenting with to try to add texture and make different parts of models look different. Like, you know, like a cloth should look different from like armor plates and things like that. And I think by trying to use different painting techniques to sort of achieve that and see sort of differences in texture and material composition and stuff, I think is neat and can add a lot of depth to a model.
Yeah,
I mean, admittedly, it's time consuming and pretty difficult work. Like I tried very superficially to do it on some of the models I painted and wasn't very successful with it. But I don't know. Yeah, the more you try, the better you'll get at it. So it's
okay.
certainly worth.
All right, so moving on. Then this actually we move into one of the next projects we've started to work on this year in preparation for an event next year. In this case, celebrating Mordheim, and I think it's been 20 years since
20
it was
years
released.
of Mordheim. Games Workshop's old world skirmish game.
20 years of us not playing Mordheim.
Oh yeah.
It's true.
But yeah, so both Eric and I have been working on some conversions for that. And Eric, you were the one who made some of the initial models, which we showed on the blog, of some weird, interesting like wraiths.
Yeah, I really need to get back to working on some of those. But I wanted for this Mordheim event, it was sort of suggested that Roadside Picnic, an old sort of Russian science fiction novel that had spawned a film called Stalker. I just thought that some of the themes and concepts from that could kind of work its way into Mordheim, and a lot of the elements sort of fit that sort of decaying city, and I kind of wanted to explore the concept of these interesting physical anomalies, but do it in the sense of using some almost as though some of the skeletons and undead that had been trapped in this city that's been poisoned by Wardstone for so long, and how that might have affected some of these skeletons and other undead in the place. But it's still, I built a couple of models from some of the new, what are they called? What are the storm or
like the night
models? The night taunt, yeah. Some of their models and whatnot, and it was fun. I didn't do a whole lot with the models, but put a bunch of like little nails and stuff through their arms and whatnot, and I don't know. It was fun just kind of using some of these new Age of Sigmar models and seeing kind of the quality of them and what I could do with them. But I feel I have a lot of stuff I want to continue to do and explore some other ideas and such with the warband. But
Mm,
that's something that we'll see later on next year. So
yeah. Um. Oh, and so then finally it took till September for me to finally paint one of those guard that I assembled, like that I sculpted and cast and assembled. And in this case, it was another model with a shotgun. And this, I spent a lot of time trying to experiment, again, sort of with like textures, black, and trying to create like believable camouflage, like urban camouflage. In this case, trying to make like digital camouflage, and so I'm pretty pleased with the effect overall. But like I mean, it took forever to do. So like all of the different little individual lines and stuff on the camouflage I hand painted. And
Yeah, that's the
so
reason why people don't paint digital camouflage pictures, I think.
yeah, I think
yeah,
I know why. um,
yeah, it's not you're not painting an army of that.
we're not quickly. So this is sort of like the first test model for like the guard army that I'm eventually going to build. So I have a bunch more of the models assembled and they're ready to be painted. So hopefully in the coming year I will actually paint some more of them, more of the assembled models. But the first picture is showing the model standing next to the little infiltration expert that I made. So I think they fit together pretty well.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess all of these models are going to be used eventually in an undisclosed time for a kind of collaboration with a fellow friend for this Rise of Phaeton thing that we sort of hinted at. That I guess people will you'll hear more about that at some point in 2019. But it's been a slow build up of things, but
Yeah.
look forward to that.
And then so now we're actually coming up to like the end of the year. Um, so that was in September, and then the next few months, like a lot of my work was focused on converting some Mordheim models. In this case, trying to convert some Sister of Sigmar models. Trying to make ones that are a little more in line of what I would imagine the Sisters of Sigmar would look like. And so by the end of the year, I've started work on two of them, and I've sort of used them as an excuse to do a lot of sculpting. But yeah, so here's one of them, and I've also done a lot of work to try and make much smaller like war hammers and other weapons for them. So if any of
Yeah,
you
the first
remember the original Sister of Sigmar models that Games Workshop released for Mordheim, they're pretty wonky looking, and they're very much just nuns with like oversized hammers. They're pretty ridiculous looking.
it's not they were not a great look.
No.
But your
Um,
first model here was actually at least partially based on some of the more recent Necromunda models, the Cawdor models, but
yeah, so
it's
this
relatively unrecognizable.
I mean, if you look at the legs and the back of the model, you can get some hints that that's where it came from. But I still have a lot of sculpting left to do on this model. I have to finish work sculpting the boots and adding a bunch of other detailing. And then the other model that I'm working on is from one of the new Night Vault sets. In this case, Eyes of the Nine, I've taken one of the Zinch models and have started like resculpting like the clothing and stuff on the model. In this case, she has a flaming twin-tailed comet shield, and well, you can't tell now. Like I started shaving down her feet, which I'm going to sculpt boots over top. So a lot of work to be done on that, and I guess eventually next year I'll have to finish work on all of these and decide how many Sisters of Sigmar I can get done in time for the event.
Yeah, that won't be a small task.
No. So yeah, there's a lot of work ahead of it for that. But I guess yeah, look towards the blog in the future for more updates. So
I
that seems
guess
to be a running theme for this year. We started a lot of work on stuff.
yeah, it's true.
Um,
And I mean, I guess this does sort of probably lead pretty well into sort of the last major thing of the year, which is sort of almost the opposite of some of your more recent projects, Adam, in which you've just been doing lots and lots of sculpting.
yeah,
Um,
so we're working on trying to also have a segment on the blog. In this case, we're calling the conversion corner, where we're trying to hopefully once a month or once every 2 months um, show a conversion we've done where I'm trying to move away from like resculpting everything and just do more kit bash type conversions to try and get more models done and sort of just experiment with, for the most part, the high quality plastic kits Games Workshop releases. And so the first post for that project was, I guess, released today,
hmm
um, where I used
Just
one
went
of
live.
the newly released Necromunda Deloc models. And in this case, I'm not even sure. We're calling this model Happening Haber. And so she's a.
Captain Haber.
Yeah, sort. She's like some. Who knows?
Haber.
Yeah, she's a Haber from Necromunda or maybe some other Hab city. But for the most part, the model is pretty similar to the stock model. It's just some of what we thought were the weakest aspects of the kit were like the model's weapons. So those were replaced with smaller weapons that I had made and cast for the Imperial Guard.
Yeah,
And
so
then did
made lots of use of that stuff.
yeah, making use of all that stuff. And then you can tell looking at the pictures, I did do some sculpting, but it was largely just filling in a few gaps and tidying up some of the seams and stuff
You
on the
know, you couldn't
model.
get away from it, Adam. Couldn't get away from it.
No, it's gonna be slow. It's gonna be hard for me to pull myself completely away from the green stuff, but
But
and
not.
then we can sort of end that. The last picture in the post kind of shows the model standing next to one of the plastic Cadians and one of the Dark Imperium Death Guard models, and you can sort of tell the model's getting close to sort of breaking the scale seen in a lot of 40k models. I mean,
GW's never been too careful with that anyway, so
yeah, and you could also say just in general, the different Necromunda sets released, they've been all over the place in terms of
yeah, I
scale and
feel
size.
maybe it's just being a specialist game thing. They probably weren't nearly as concerned
Yeah.
about how they looked in relationship to the like 40k armies because it's like it's a different entity and whatnot. But I mean, obviously, for people converting models, like they still want to use those things because
Hmm.
all the different Necromunda gangs have been some of the best sort of conversion material for
Hmm.
particular Inquisitor 28 stuff, just because they're pretty diverse. Like, finally, we got some models that sort of have armored body gloves, finally, some nice looking trench coats,
Yeah.
like lots of different interesting things. And even if the models haven't all been perfect. They're still a good source of interesting parts that you can kit bash to your heart's content and like make something you're excited about. And
Yeah.
yeah, so hopefully this new column will be a way to just sort of celebrate sort of the kit bashing aspect of the hobby and just converting models. And hopefully we'll be able to use some of our backlog of models and make some neat stuff
Yeah.
in the future.
Yeah, so that sort of wraps up the year. That's what we did. Um,
I think
so
it was a good year. It wasn't maybe as focused as some of the previous ones, but I think we did a bunch of interesting things, and I'm kind of excited to see how it continues next year and what we can use from
yeah.
that and keep going. And
So I
certainly,
guess if any of you are interested, the tallies are out. I painted 5 models this year, and Eric, you painted 6.
oh
Oh
yeah,
my.
Unless actually Eric, maybe did you paint some Space Marines this year too, or was that last year?
mm, I think that was last year.
Okay,
I may
well,
have painted the Shade Spiral, but I feel that was probably last year too.
okay, so we didn't paint 5 models as a far cry from like 24.
Yeah, no, that's true.
But I
But I
guess
mean,
yeah, a lot of my efforts were focused on like sculpting and casting models, so there's only
yeah,
time for so much.
but I guess I mean ultimately, thanks everybody for all of you who've actually listened to the podcast throughout the year and have looked at the blog and commented and such. All your comments really mean a lot to us, and um, it's great just to interact with other hobbyists, get your opinions, and see your own models through Instagram and such. And it's certainly the or at least one of the best parts of the hobby for me, and I think all of us just interacting with the community and such. And
Mm-hmm.
I hope this episode didn't come across as too much of us like talking about all the great stuff we did, but um, certainly we couldn't do it without all your support, everyone's support and encouraging words and whatnot, and
And
sort of
suggestions of like modifications and stuff that we can do to the different models.
yeah. Now, because I feel certainly we're very can be very critical about models and such, but like we still make mistakes and don't and like the more critical comments from people I think the better we can make models, and we're certainly
Mm-hmm.
try to make the best things we can and try to be as critical with our own models as possible. So certainly anyone's suggestions are like we really consider them, and it's very much appreciated.
Yes.
But yeah, I guess with that, does anyone have any sort of last words or things you'd like to say?
I guess just in general, it's been a great year of like the hobby, and look forward to what the next year brings. And I guess I
Yeah.
encourage everyone else to keep at it, keep converting, and keep painting models. Um,
Yeah, and I guess if there's anything people would like to see in the coming year, like let us know. And I guess that sort of does another major thing we did, not really in the converting or building model sense. We did start like to do this like Twitch streaming and such, and hopefully this will only continue to expand, and we'll be able to maybe do some unboxing stuff and even perhaps start to stream some of our conversion and painting sessions and such to be able to show a little bit more about how we kind of do some of these conversions and some of the thought processes and going into
yeah,
them, which is, sometimes a little bit hard to convey just through text in a post because I
yeah,
feel our posts can be kind of wordy as is.
yeah. And
And
also, I think we'll
yeah,
give another opportunity to just interact with the community itself. So
yeah.
everything helps.
All right. Well, again, thanks for listening, everybody. And I guess we'll talk to you again in the new year.
Yep. Thanks for the great year. We did it.
We did
Podcast
it.
is recorded.
All right.
Excellent. Episode 51.
Yeah, it's sort of hard to believe we've recorded 51 episodes. I think we say that every week, pretty much.
Yeah.
I'm amazed we're still doing it. Amazed we're still doing it. Yeah, actually, I also posted on Instagram one of those top 9 things. Should know everyone.
Everyone
I'm
just
sure
about
Everyone
everyone
loves
knows.
them.
everyone was super excited to see us do that, but we did it.
Everyone loves them.
Just so cool.
um,
It is a
it was
good way
kind of
to
a pain
sort
in
of.
the ass to do.
It is a way to very briefly summarize like maybe what you worked on over the years, but sometimes it can be pretty stilted.
Like one of one of our most, the second most liked of our posts was me having a little one of the Adeptus Titanicus knights next to one of those like Dark Angel True Scale Marines that I made.
Oh, that's so
Or just
cool.
that.
It's a space marine.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I guess maybe people, because it was shortly after Titanicus was released, I guess it was nice to see like a good, scale sort of conversion or image. But your Death Guard didn't show up on there, which was somewhat of a shame because I feels. But I think ultimately though, most of those models or most of the things that showed up on that top 9, like the difference in likes were only like 20 off from each other and whatnot. So like
Yeah.
it's not like some of them were like super well liked and others not as much. So honestly, the stuff that might not have shown up were probably pretty similar.
Yeah, okay.
Be that as it may.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mentioned that it was kind of a pain in the ass to do, like, because I used just a website like Top 9 or whatnot, and most of the time you do it, it would send the image back, but it would have a huge watermark on the front that said Top 9.
They
Mm.
want you to know where you're getting it from.
Yeah, so it was pretty bad, but I actually contacted the makers of the website through like a Facebook chat and asking them about it, and then afterwards it started to work. I don't know.
Oh,
I
so
can
is
only
that not
imagine.
supposed to be a feature that's always supposed to happen, or?
I don't know. I can only imagine a lot of people probably complained about it like I did because it's fixed now.
Interesting.
Okay.
And you don't have to download their app to do it.
Yeah, cool. Well, it is interesting if you look at the top 9 posts, a lot of the models we have pictured there. In the year we started, we like did some get this, we did some reposts of some of our older models where in one single post we'd show kind of starting from the conversion to the final painted model to kind of document some of the earlier models from say the Pilgrim event and stuff a little better. And a lot of those are the ones that were pretty high in the likes, I guess. And the first one was the leader of our Pilgrim Warband, which is actually kind of neat.
Yeah, no. So look forward next year. Maybe we can repost some of our models again. Let's post them a lot. Like we can repost everything. Like every other month, we could probably repost the same models again. No one does that, right?
Well,
Well, we'll try to minimize that as best we can. In all honesty.
But I mean, in some regards, it is a good way to kind of for certainly as like new people are coming in and like discovering like your work and stuff on Instagram. Sometimes that can help
Nah,
because
it's true.
I'm
And
certainly guilty of if I follow like a new person on Instagram, it's not like I'm always going back and looking through their back catalog of all their images and models
nah,
and
yes,
stuff they've worked
it's true,
on.
and particularly if it's in the context of pooling together some of the images to show sort of the work in progress through it. I think it can be fairly helpful.
Yeah, no, overall, I think it's a good thing. Or it can be a good thing.
I mean, yeah, I think ultimately Instagram has been a relatively helpful addition. It's certainly my favorite social media platform because it's just pictures.
Yeah, no,
You
I
don't
think
have
it
to,
helps.
and it's unlike Twitter, like you don't easily get lost in it,
That's
which is
true.
good. Which is good. But I mean, I guess with that, we could probably call the stream to a close soon.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
no, I think we've
I mean,
covered
it's
all the
late.
stuff
I should go to
that we
bed.
wanted to cover. Yeah, it's
Let's
pretty
do it.
late. All right, everybody, thanks for listening. Um, and I guess look forward to hearing from us in the future.
Yeah, and happy holidays, everybody. And yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah, happy holidays.
All right, until next time.